So welcome to today. Our subject for today is a strawberry, and it's in keeping with our theme for today because today is Eka Day in Brisbane. So that means that it's the Royal Show holiday, basically. And because of COVID, there's no Royal Show, and everybody's either staying home and doing art, or they've all gone off somewhere for the weekend, and that's great. So here we are, and Eka doesn't really stand for anything. It's actually short for exhibition because the Eka, or the show, used to be held at, or is still held at, the Brisbane Exhibition grounds. So Eka is our Aussie name for that. So welcome to today's class. One of the things that they often have, or always have at an Eka, is strawberry sundaes. And so strawberries are in season at the moment, and I thought today would be a great opportunity to paint a strawberry. So this is our subject for the day. And the focus really is just going to be about looking at the detail of the strawberry and the shape and colour and tone, and just focusing on one thing rather than, you know, a whole picture for a change. So it's nice just to drill down sometimes and focus on something. So I'm just going to get started on that. So the first part of the class is all about doing our black and white sketch with charcoal. And if you've been before, you'll know the drill. So you probably already started. You're probably 10 steps ahead of me already. So what I do is put this into an art diary. So it's my little art diary where I do all my sketches and things for each class, and keeps them together, keeps them clean and tidy, well, as clean as charcoal can get anyway. And it's just a really good little practice to do before we do the colour version, because you get familiar with it. You get to study the darks and the lights and the shapes and all those things in black and white. And then we can convert it to colour. So this is designed to fit onto an A3 or an A4 page. Basically, it's a strawberry, and you can fill the whole page, or you can just do a little one, whatever you prefer. In pastels, it's often easier to do something bigger rather than smaller, because pastels are chunky and they're big sticks of pigment. So doing finer detail is a lot more difficult than doing big marks. So the bigger the better, I reckon. So let's get started on this. So normally I just draw up around about the shape of my page that I'm going to be painting on, and then we fit the shape in of what we're painting. So today there's no great detail, there's no backgrounds, there's really nothing else in here except the strawberry. But I did put a grid on it just to help us draw it up and get it into the right spot so it fits into the page properly. Now you can draw this small or big or whatever size you like. I like to do it almost the size of my page. And I'm using a long stick of charcoal. So this is willow charcoal, and it's quite soft. So I can blend that with my fingers. I can erase it and do all sorts of things and get lots of different tones with the charcoal. So it's good because I can see what I'm doing. And sorry, I just had to mute someone then. and work with the sticks. And I like to hold it loose like this. So when it's a long stick like this, I like to hold it on the end so that I just have a fairly loose hold on it, and I'm not hanging on to it tightly, because when you hold something tightly, sorry, gonna mute. There we go. Apologies for that. So if you do want to speak up and have any questions, please do. But I'll keep everyone sound off during class, because that way we don't get any background noise. All right, so what I'm doing is I'm looking at the shape of the strawberry and seeing where it crosses across in the crosshairs here on my square, and the direction of the top of the strawberry, and then coming down and noticing that it sits fairly high up on my page, doesn't it? So it probably comes to about here, about halfway down on my page, unless I've drawn my page the wrong size, which is quite likely. So it comes to about there, and then across and up. So it's almost a triangular shape, sort of almost a heart kind of triangle shape. So it comes into not a pointy point, but a rounded point on the end, and then it's got these shoulders, I guess you call them, on the top. So it's quite a lovely, voluptuous sort of shape, I think. I really love the shape of strawberries. So we're going to draw, we've drawn that in, and I've drawn it in to fit within the grid that's on the page. So it's going to fill the whole page just about, which is good. The bigger the better. And then, so I've just drawn the outline of that in, and then we'll just do a little sketch of the leaves as well. So just do the outlines. Don't worry too much about all the detail at this point, because we just want to really be looking at the lights and the darks and the shapes. So this is a little rehearsal. We just do this to rehearse the picture and get familiar with it. And when you do it the second time around, it's often a lot easier. So these beautiful big green leaves are so nice. And so that bottom leaf on the right kind of crosses over your midline there, or your halfway line. And then the top leaf on the left crosses over the other halfway line. So you kind of know that all the leaves basically fit into this top quarter of your page. So that's handy to know. And then you've got your shoulder down inside the bottom quarter. You've got the tip of the strawberry, or the rounded end of the strawberry, taking up most of, or half of, the bottom left-hand quarter. And then the top left quarter has the other shoulder. So when you break images or pictures up into segments like that, it just makes it a lot easier to draw and get everything in the right place. Cool. So once you've got your basic shapes in there like that, and I think I've gone over a bit far, but anyway, we'll just make the page a bit wider. Cool. All right. So now we've done that, we need to start looking at the shapes and the tones. So for tones and for colouring in larger areas, I've got a shorter stick of charcoal. So it's a chunky stick, and compared to that one, it's a bit fatter. And I've broken it off from a long stick. So that means I can kind of just wipe it over my page like this and cover a much larger area with my charcoal. So by doing that, it doesn't take up as much time, and you get a wider coverage. You also get a more even kind of coverage. So I like to do that with charcoal and pastels. And so my strawberry is kind of a mid-tone really, isn't it? You can see all the little dents, or the little seeds in there have a darker hole, and then we've got a couple of bright spots on there where the light's shining on it. But for the most part, the whole thing is pretty much a mid-tone. And I can see, if I squint at the black and white picture, you can see that it's a little bit darker just up here on the top, under where the leaves go, because there must be shadow there. So I can make that a slightly darker grey with my charcoal, and then leave the rest in that lovely mid-tone. And what I'm doing now is just pushing it in with my fingers, because I just want to blend it in to the paper and let it sort of sit there and be quite smooth, which is nice. When we're working in charcoal, to get white or light back into my picture, I use my eraser. So unlike pastels, we'll use white pastels or light coloured pastels. But in this instance, because I don't have any white charcoal, I actually do somewhere, you can get white pencils, white charcoal pencils. But when I'm working on white paper like this and sketching with charcoal, you can use your kneadable eraser and just take out some of the charcoal to get your light or your white back in. And that works quite nicely. So kneadable erasers are awesome. They look like this when they're new. So they're all clean and lovely and a pale grey colour. and then you can pull them apart so they feel a little bit like blue tack, and I just pull off pieces to use for different things. You can use them with charcoal or pastel, and they're wonderful for, you know, getting things off, blending things in, and all sorts of stuff. So we use those a lot. So I've just got a little piece here, and what I'm doing is making a point on the end, like a pencil point, and then I can kind of just dab it like that and get some dots in there. So you can see how that works. The thing that you have to do though is keep finding a clean section, because if I keep dabbing at that, what it does is it picks up the charcoal or the pastel, and then it'll put it back. So eventually it won't leave white anymore. It'll just put color back down. So I've got to keep finding clean sections of it, which is why they get very dirty, because we kind of push all this charcoal and pastel into the eraser and it gets quite filthy. But that's a really great way to get white or light into your charcoal. All right, I've just noticed under here it's darker too, so I'm going to darken up under there. So always kind of wander your eyes around your picture and try to notice the tones and the lights and the darks. So that's darker there because there's shadow underneath, isn't there, down in here, where the thing is sitting on a surface. And I always love to put my shadows in because it gives me some gravity and tells me that it's on something, so it's not just floating around in midair. And then of course it's got this lovely dark coming up inside the strawberry. Okay, so I'm going to move up into the leaves and add a bit of colour in there, and then we'll play around with some darks and lights and tones. So looking at this particular leaf, it's kind of darker in the centre, and then it gets lighter on the tip. So because it's lighter on the tip, I can use my eraser to get some of that off, just like that. So see how that kind of gives it a bit of a turn now, and it's kind of got a little curl going on. And I can just see a little vein going up through there. So you can draw a sharp line with your charcoal down through the middle of the leaf, just to give it the little line for the vein. And then if you want to soften any of it off, you can pop your fingers in and just kind of blend it or dab it. Dabbing is a really good gesture to do as well, just to kind of pat it in without blending it around too much. The more you blend charcoal, the kind of lighter it gets. So for instance, if I put some up here and then blend it, it just starts to get lighter and lighter and looking a bit mottly, which is a good thing if you want to get that variation in tone. And then you've got to add more charcoal to darken it off again. So that's what the willow charcoal does. It's quite soft. Okay, so let's do this next leaf. So I can see there's a little vein nearly off on the right hand side. So you can see more of the left side of this leaf than you can of the right. And we've got a little dark section at the top there. And again, I can just pull my finger down and drag some of that charcoal down through the leaf to get some tone. And it's actually lighter than the one behind it. So always noticing things and where they sit in relation to each other. So this one's lighter, which will mean it'll bring it forward. And the one behind is a little darker, so it's going to send that backwards. And it'll also tell us where the turns and twists and shadows and things are. And again, if you want to get some light back in there, so I just want it to sharpen up the edge of this one, bring it forward, I can use my eraser to do that and just lighten up that edge like that. So that brings it forward and it sends the other one back because it's a little bit darker. So that's very cool. Then we'll move on to the next one. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on this section of the class, but it is a good little process to go through just to familiarise ourselves with the image and to talk about, you know, the lights and darks and just notice those things so that when we go on to the colour picture, you'll already have that information to work with. And then we can convert everything to colour and look at tone with colour as well. So just go through and fill in those little leaves. And again, I noticed that the edge of this little curly one here is a little bit lighter where it crosses over in front of the other one. So again, I can lighten that up on the edge and bring it forward a bit. So just noticing all those little nuances, I guess, that really help to bring your art to life. And then this beautiful big leaf, so the second last one on the right, is kind of dark where it comes out from the strawberry. So it's darker under there because it's got shadow. And then as it comes up, it gets lighter towards the tip, and then we've got a little bit of a dark tip on there. So that's kind of nice because the light and the dark gives me that beautiful curve and tells us that it's twisting up a little bit. A bit more dark in there. I love my darks. Don't be afraid of the dark. It's always lovely to add really dark darks and get some drama. We'll get back to the strawberry in a minute. I know it's not done, finished. And then the final leaf on the right, so we'll just darken that one off underneath, and it's slightly lighter as it curls up. And then back into the strawberry, and I just want to darken that off again under where the leaves sit. I know I'm probably doing it a little bit darker than what it is in the picture, but it's always nice to create a bit of drama, I think. Lovely. Now, the other thing, the detail on the strawberry is really interesting, isn't it? Because we've got all these little black dots, which also have a highlight. So essentially, they're a hole like this. So it's a little hole, so it's a round hole, and they're dark in the middle. And then they've got this little shiny bit of light on the edge of each one. Now, when we do this in pastel, it'll be a lot easier because we can just use a pastel to mark in all those little bits of light. And of course, it's on a grey background. So each one has a little shine right on the edge, and it goes down into the centre of the hole, the seed thingy. And then in the middle, it's really dark. So we've got that gradation. It's very subtle gradation from dark up to mid-grey. And then around the outside, we've got a little shine. And you'll notice that the shine changes position depending on where it is on the strawberry and the direction of the light. So I'll just use my eraser to take some of that out. I just did that as a little example of what each little one looks like. Something like that. And so you'll notice that each, what do I call them? Little seed holes. Each little hole has light, well, most of them do, except for these ones around here on the far right and under the leaves. There's no light reflecting on those guys. But further out on the very edge, and then in the middle here where the light's coming from. So your light is coming from top left, and it's also bouncing off the surface that this strawberry is sitting on. So you can see there's light over here on the right hand side, on that right shoulder. There's a lot of light there. That'll be light that's bouncing off whatever surface is around it. So if this is on a white table, what that's going to do is reflect off the strawberry, and it'll put light onto different parts of it. So it's harder to get the light back in once you've filled it all up. But basically that's where the light is. There's also light here. I'm just going to erase. You don't have to do this, but I just want to show you where the light is in relation to the strawberry. So the light's coming from there. That's where most of the light is hitting. And then as we work our way around the strawberry, it's going to have light. I'm just doing little dabs to represent the light on the corners of all the little holes or the sides. And you can see on the right-hand side, all the little bits of light are on the right, aren't they? Because it's catching the top edge of those holes on the right side. And so the dark side is on the left of these guys. I'm just going to mark this in lightly. Feel free to do likewise, but I just want to show you what I'm talking about to just demonstrate what I mean. So I don't know if you can see that clearly. I've taken a little bit of charcoal off and I've tried to leave sort of a lighter space to the right, and then filling in on the left of each little hole with dark. So that's starting to give us an idea. It's not what it should look like. They're way smaller than that, but just as an example. And then as you work around the strawberry, the light changes direction. So the little holes that are at the top of the strawberry, so between the leaf and the shiny area, all the light on those little holes are at the top, or the top right. And then as we go around the strawberry, we end up with the light on the left. So it kind of moves around the shape of it, depending on where it sits. So I'm just going to do some very, very loose. These are far too big, but I just want to give you an example of what I'm talking about. And so the light is on the left-hand side, and it's on the right-hand side, and it's on the top That's easy to remember. Very often it's the other way around and I get very confused. So, and then we've got all this light. So I'll just do a few little samples on there. The light's on the left and the dark's on the right and top, and then on the other way around the other side. This is a very, very rough drawing. And then we've got our little dark little holes in the middle here, and then the light is kind of all around them, isn't it? It sort of makes like a chicken wire pattern with the white or the light around all the little holes. And so they're dark because they've got shadow. So each little one has shadow because they're divots. They're dipped in to the strawberry. So they've all got their own little shadows and their own little lights. And then the main area where it's really light is, like I said, a chicken wire kind of shape. So when we do that with pastel, we can really lighten up that spot. So that's a very loose demonstration of what I'm talking about. And we'll get stuck into the colour version. Yeah. So the kind of, you can see how that's, and it shows you the turn of the strawberry. So all these things are really important when you want to turn something and give it texture or body and communicate, you know, what it's doing and which direction it's going in and where the light's coming from, because that's really important. Lovely. All right. So let's move on now and do the colour version. So for the colour version, you're going to need a piece of coloured paper. I'm going to stop fiddling. And some pastels. And in my notes, I think I said, what colour paper did I say? Any colour. There you go. Any colour will be fine. And that's true because a red strawberry will look great on anything. So if you've got black, it'll look awesome on black. If you've got white, it'll look great on that too. So my favourite paper colour, I guess, is a mid-tone. I really like working on mid-tones. So what I've picked out is what's called a rose grey for today. But whatever you have will be fine, so don't stress about it. So this is my rose grey paper, and it's kind of a pinky mid-tone. It's really nice, and I think the red will be quite nice on that. The red would be beautiful on anything, so whatever you have will be fine. Just remember though, if it's a dark paper, you might want to think about what darks you're going to use in your strawberry, and maybe have it kind of vanishing into the black, or if it's a light paper, where you put your whites. Okay, so I've got my paper here ready to go, and I've got a little board, and what I've done is just taped it down on the corners so it doesn't move around. Because I'm sitting flat, that's all I need to do is just keep it still on a flat surface. And then as my page collects dust from the pastels, I'm going to be tipping it off over here onto my little towel. So it just gathers on the paper, and it's better to tip it off like that rather than blowing it everywhere, because if you do that, it'll end up in your furniture and your shoes and everywhere. So, and it's very dirty, so you don't want to be putting pastel all over the place. So best if you can tip it off. The other option is to work on an easel. So if you're working on an easel and it's upright, then your dust will just automatically drop down into your tray or your lip at the bottom. So just make sure you've got something there to catch the dust. I find alfoil is really good because it's slippery, so the dust doesn't kind of hold on to it. You can tip it out and treat it like a little gutter or something. So alfoil is great for that. And what else do I need to tell you? Okay, that's probably it as far as that goes. And next thing we're going to do is just draw the strawberry up with charcoal, and then I'll talk about colours. So I did send out a little sample of the colour palette that I've chosen to do this with. So I hope that was helpful. And you know, if you've had time, you've maybe been able to grab your colours and put them all together before we started. So I'll go back to the beginning and get stuck into the shape first. So you can see on the coloured picture here, I've got a grid drawn up, so I can do the same thing on here and then get the strawberry into the right spot with regard to the grid. So I'm just going to measure this up and pop in my halfway marks. What I'm using is charcoal. I like to use charcoal on here for my drawing on a lighter paper because it's easy to see, but it's also really easy to get off. So if you don't press too hard, you'll be able to just wipe that off quite easily with your kneadable eraser. And it's lovely and soft. So just press lightly, and then we can take that out later on. Okay, so back to the drawing. So I'm going to draw this in again. I'm going to start here on this top right quarter because that's kind of a little triangular shape I can see in the strawberry, and then down and across. So it kind of comes across about halfway down there. Funny little shape, aren't they? And then it's got these lovely shoulders and then down into a point, soft point. So the good thing about the charcoal is if you muck it up and put too many lines in like I've just done, you can easily remove them. So don't stress too much if that's what you've done. It's cool. All right, so we've got the shape of the strawberry in, and then we've just got to put the leaves in again. So again, just looking at the shapes of those, what overlaps with what, and where they meet the strawberry. So we kind of taper off a little bit. We've got gaps between a couple. So that's a nice little, I like how they're all slightly different. Kind of cool. This lovely big fat one, and then got that little curly one on the end. Oh, there's another one there I missed before. See him? On the edge, just there. There we go. So that's our basic shape, and that's probably about all we need to do right now with the charcoal. And the rest we'll do with colour. So once you've got that drawn up, and if I'm racing ahead and you're feeling a bit behind, just yell out and let me know. I'll try to pace myself and go a bit slower. The other thing, oh, that's right, I've got a little towel here. So this is just an old tea towel, and it's really handy to have a hand towel or tea towel next to you, but wetting one end of it is great, because when you mix colours with your fingers, you end up with very, dirty fingers. And if I wanted to pick up a white and put it on, I'd need to have a clean finger so that it didn't get, filthy from what was on my hands. So having a little wet towel is really handy. And then I leave the other end dry. So wet one end and dry the other. That way I can wet my fingers, clean them off as best I can, and then give them a little wipe on the dry end, and I'm ready to go with my next pastel. So it doesn't clean them up perfectly. I don't think anything ever will, as far as my hands go, but it's good enough to keep you going, so you don't have to get up and wash your hands all the time. So handy, have a little hand towel there or something that you can just wipe your fingers on. Okay. Now, what else have I got to do? All right, let's have a look at the colours. So what I've done is I've put them onto a page here, and I did send this out to you, so you should have a copy of it on your email. And then I've put them in order here on the page from dark down to light. Well, almost. Yellow and white were in the wrong order, but swap them around and we should be right. So what I've got is blue violet. So blue violet is very similar to black. It's a lovely dark colour and it's beautiful for shadows. My favourite dark one. So that's a must have. And if you don't have one, see if you can get yourself one. The next colour I've got is the dark plum red. So that's a lovely deep reddy colour that's going to be really nice as well for some shadows and some tones in the strawberry. I've got purple because I love using purple in my shadows as well. It's a lovely warm kind of colour, so that'll be nice down here at the bottom of the strawberry and maybe up here under the leaves. I've got blue. I don't know whether I will use blue. I might not need to because I've got purple, but I put it in anyway. If you don't have purple, then blue will work really nicely because blue and red make purple. So you can always use some ultramarine blue, something similar to that instead of purple. Then I've got red, obviously, because we've got a red strawberry. Red's a really tricky colour in most mediums, but I struggle to find a good red. My best reds I ever found, I found in Paris, of course, and they're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful. I'll just go grab them and show you, because red's a really hard colour to get a good one of. So Art Spectrum do some reds, but they're just not quite, I don't know, they're just not red enough. Sounds weird, doesn't it? This is my Parisian set. Aren't they stunning? So, this is a really good set of red because they go from dark through to light and then out again. And this bright red is just divine. And then you've got all the shades in between, and then it goes down into that beautiful magenta kind of colour. So yeah, it's a tough one, red, but if you've only got one red, then maybe mix some orange in with it, or some pink or purple, or whatever you can come across really. But yeah, I struggle to find good reds, but I shall keep looking. So I've got a cool red. This is more of a bluey red colour, and then I've got an orange red. So I've got a couple of reds there. Then a mid green, so that's just like a grass green mid colour. And then I've got a limey green. I really like the limey green for getting a bit of light and highlight into the leaves. I've got white, of course, and we'll save that for last because I like to save the light for last. And then I've got a pale yellow, which is also going to be nice for some of the highlights. So that's basically my palette. And I think that will make a nice little combination of colours to get this going. So if you would like, I can just leave this sitting here until you're ready to go. If you want to have a couple of minutes to get that ready and get your sketch done, and we can get going. So what is it, 1:44? What if I come back at 1:50? So that's about 6 minutes or so. Just grab a water and have a little break for a sec, and then we'll come back and get stuck into it. So what I'll do is I'll just move the drawing over there in case you need to still see that. and my colors there, so you can have a look at those. So if you haven't got your palette and everything ready yet, you can get on with that now, and then we'll come back and we'll start putting some color on our page. So I shall see you in, what did I say? 1:50, 5 minutes now. Okay, see you soon. Alrighty, so I've got a minute or so to go, but I'm gonna keep talking. Hopefully you've got your colors all sorted out now, so that should be good to go. And I'll pop this aside. So I like to keep my colors just next to me on my table, and I like to keep them separate from my whole collection, because that way I know what I'm using. It's, you know, right there. And if I have to go away and not finish it till next week, then I can still keep the colors in a separate little box, and you'll know what you used. So it's always a good idea to do that, rather than trying to, you know, remember what you had, which I've made the mistake of doing. You can never find the colors you used to have. So I just keep them beside me there, so they're within reach, nice and handy. And I also have my reference photo next to me just here, so I can see that as well. Some people like to prop them up in front of you so you can see it, you know, in without having to look down, and that's a good option as well. The other thing to do when you're working on something like this, or anything really, is to step away from it regularly. So when you're constantly looking at something, you know, sitting down and not moving, you kind of can't see the forest for the trees. So it's a really good idea to just get up and move around, because moving's good anyway. But it's also good because then you get another perspective. So it's great to have a little break, walk away, come back, and you'll see things you hadn't noticed before. When I'm working on something, I have it on an easel, and I will leave it on the easel for the whole time. So every time I walk past, I can glance at it and kind of assess it and figure out, you know, what I might need to do to change it or keep working on it. So working from a distance is a really good idea, and being able to step back and see things from a different perspective is very helpful. So that's my little tip for the day. And I do like working on an easel more than I like sitting down at a desk, because you can see what you're doing much better. Okay, so let's get started. If you are ready to go, then I suggest erasing your grid marks off your paper, because we're not going to fill in the background today. So we're going to actually leave the background unpainted. Now, if you want to fill it in at the end, then by all means go for it. You might not like the color of your paper. You might want it to have a blue background or a purple one or something different. So if that's the case, then, you know, you can always fill the whole thing in with pastel. It's no problem at all. But for this class, we're not going to do that. And so we're just going to be working on the strawberry on its own, and the little shadow that will sit underneath it. The picture's on a white background, so it doesn't have to have anything else in there. I do love putting backgrounds in things though. So let's get started on our strawberry study for the day. First thing we're going to do is pop in some colour, and that's basically, we're just going to block in some colour and then start blending it in with some fingers. So today is all about blending, and it's about, you know, really studying the tones and the different colours and how we can make them with just the few colours that we've got selected for our palette today. So let's get started, and I think we might get going on, we might start with the leaves actually. Now the reason I said that is because the leaves kind of sit behind the strawberry. If you're looking at this and you wanted to say, well, what's in front of what, I would say probably the leaves sit behind the strawberry, because you can actually see the strawberry edge coming out from under the leaves, and they kind of tuck down in behind it from this perspective. So let's put some green in here for the leaves, and we'll spend some time on the leaves, and then we'll get stuck into the red strawberry. So as I said earlier, I've got a mid-green here, and so I'm just going to basically put that down where I can see a mid-green, which is pretty much nearly everywhere as far as these go. There's a little bit of lime or light green here and there. I'm just going to mute again. There we go. I think we've lost some people. What's happened? Kathy, I can hear you scratching and I can't seem to get your microphone off. Oh, there it is. Great. Thank you. Lovely. Someone's fallen out. Who's gone? Nicole. Okay, not sure where she's got to. All right. I'll see if she can come back in. Okay, so let's get back to the leaves. Sorry about that. I just wanted to cut out the background noise because it can be quite distracting. And pastels are very noisy, which is a strange thing to say, but they are actually quite scratchy. And if you have a dry kind of dry pastel and then you're rubbing it onto this textured paper, it can get really noisy. So because it's so gritty. And when we're all on computers and things, it gets quite loud in your ears. So it's not because I don't want to talk to you. I would love to talk to you, and please feel free to unmute and ask anything or suggest anything. I'm very happy to do that. It's just the distraction of the background noise. All right. So I have basically just popped a bit of green onto my leaves. Now the tricky part here is going to be blending these with just our fingers, because it's some of them are reasonably small spaces and they go up into those little tips. So we're going to have to either just go very gently and then we can use the pastels to get some more defined edges in there. I'm just blending these in now, just pushing this green into the paper. And my pastel was quite a soft one, so that might have been a schminky or something. It felt very creamy. So when you have a creamy pastel, you don't need to put quite as much down because it covers quite a big area and fills the tooth very quickly. And you'll notice too when you're rubbing it in like this, it also gets a bit noisy sometimes. Okay, lovely. So we'll just push those in. Don't worry too much about the tips and getting, that very precise, because it's going to be pretty tricky to get your fingers in there. So we'll just go as far as you can and then leave them a bit blurry on the ends, and we can come back with the pastel and tighten that up. So that's the nice thing about pastels. You'll never get a really fine line with a pastel because they are chunky and they're pigment and they're powdery. So to get a really hard line is not easy. And if you do want to do detail work like that, you're probably better off using pencils, because with pencils at least you can try and get a much finer line. And that's cool. Pastel pencils are readily available. I tend not to use them too much. I don't know why. I think I like the challenge of trying to do it all with a chunky stick. And but you can use the end of your pastel. So for instance, I can get this one, which is well used and loved, but if I look around on the edge of it, I can find some little sharp edges on the tips there. And sometimes you can kind of use that just to get a line on the edge and let it sit on the surface. So for instance, to draw the tip of my leaf in, I can do that quite well just with the end or the edge of my pastel, and then not put your fingers into it, because as soon as you put your fingers in there, it's going to blur and smudge. So the trick is to try and use the end or the tip or the edge or the sharp bit of the pastel to get a mark on there and then not blend it. So let's try and do that on all the tips. If you have pencils, that's even better. You'll find it a lot easier. Sometimes you don't have a pencil that will match the color of the pastel. So I'm just going to do it this way and rely on my pastel to get as sharp a tip as I can, or a fine edge. You're not going to get a really fine edge. It's just the nature of the beast, and that's how they rock and roll. I think that's why I like them actually, it's because they're not too precise. I know if I had to do watercolor, I wouldn't be enjoying it very much because you've got to be so precise with watercolor. Okay, so we've got that filled in for the most part. And now I'm going to be looking at where can I see like a limey green or a bit of red. So some of those leaves have like brown patches or bits on them. Rather than picking up a brown, I'm going to pop a bit of red in here. Red and green are complementary. So just on the tip of this first leaf on the left, there's a bit of a brown sort of mark. So using red is a good option, because when I put it over green, it goes kind of muddy, and it's a beautiful complementary blend also. So red and green always work really nicely together. And they're a very similar tone too. So if I was looking at this in black and white, for instance, I probably wouldn't even see the difference, because they're much the same in tone. And by tone, I mean the same grey, basically. So if you squinted at that through your eyelashes, then they'd probably kind of blend in together and you wouldn't really see a whole lot of difference. Maybe the red's slightly darker, depending on your red. We'll all have different reds and different greens. And now I've popped a bit of that on there. I'm just going to dab it in gently, just on the bits where I can fit my finger in. I'm not going to try and get into that pointy bit. I might just leave that as it is. If you think that's a bit too red, or, you know, oh damn, went outside the line, you can come back over with the green and kind of push it in a little bit with your pastel. So you can actually layer quite a few times with pastel over pastel. And what happens is the pastel that you're working with will pick up the colour that's underneath it and kind of blend it with whatever's there. So you can make some really cool colours and tones just by blending the pastels together. What I was doing then, I went outside the lines and made my tip all blurred. So I've just got my kneadable eraser and I'm trying to get some of it off. So this is another reason to press lightly at first, just so that you can, if you need to, take off some crumbs that might escape or edges or something like that. So, but just go very gently. All right, so I'm just going to pop a bit more red. I can see some red on this little leaf here, on the edge of that one. So I'm going to pop a bit of that on there. I really love red and green together. If ever you're doing trees and shrubs and things like that, and you want to put some shadow or warmth, like warm shadow in there, red is a really beautiful option. So they play nicely together, red and green. They're really lovely. And put a bit of that down there. I can see some darker patches or brown blotches down through here as well. And I'm going to put lime green in there in a minute. So that'll be the next in my colour process. And then just back over to this little fella who's got a little brown tip. So you can actually make amazing colours with just a few in your palette. It's just really about, I guess, understanding what each colour is made of and what will happen when you blend them with other ones and going from there. So that tip's a little bit too red. I do have blenders. I've got rubber tipped blenders, but I'm trying not to use them because I know some of you don't, and it's kind of an unfair advantage. But if you do have little blenders, you can always get the tip in there. I will show you. So this is a good one. It's got a really pointy tip on it, and because they're rubbery, so they feel a little bit like our fingers, and so you can actually get in there and blend things around. So if you don't have a set of these, grab one, because they're really handy to have for getting into the pointy bits like that. And this is just a little Montmartre brand, cheapy brand. This brand's good for this sort of stuff, but don't buy their pastels because they're not very good. But for these things and your charcoal and stuff like that, this brand's not too bad. It's pretty cheap. I think you get 6 for about $14 or something. That's not too bad. All right, So I've got all my brown blotches in there, and I've got a fair bit of dust sitting on my page. You might be able to see that loose dust. I'm just going to tip that off. When I tip it off, what's going to happen is it's going to hang on to some of the paper here, because I'll tip it this way. So it'll all fall down there, and it's like a waterfall. It'll kind of catch on the paper because it's quite gritty. And I'll have to clean that up later with my eraser and just dab at it and get it all off. But it's just how it is, unfortunately. So you should probably be able to see now where that went. Yeah, there's a lot of it just here. So that's one disadvantage of this paper, is it just kind of hangs on to every single crumb. But it's also really good because it does hang on, and you can get quite a lot of pastel onto your page. Okay, so that's looking a bit blotchy at the moment. So what I want to do now is get some of my limey green in there and just focus on those little light sections. So what I'm doing is building up the tones, or the different shades of green, to try and kind of illustrate where the light is and the different patterns in the leaves as well. So I'm going to use this lime green also to put some of the lines in there, like the little veins and things. And I'm using the very edge of it. So it's just a sharp little edge, and just running it lightly around in the direction of those veins. So nothing too hard, just going quite gently with those little lines. Keep it really soft. So that's the back leaf. And I can see at the base of that leaf, it's a little lighter down there as well. I'm going to lighten up through there. And then just gently merge that in with the other green so that they kind of merge in together. So can you see how now that's starting to look like a leaf? Because I've got the two tones of green, a little bit of red in there to give us those brown marks, and then this limey green just on the tip where I can see a lighter colour, and then just to highlight those little veins in there. And as I said, I've just used the very edge of it and pulled it through gently, gently. I don't want anything too hard or too strong, but that's just nice and soft and subtle. And then a little bit of the lime down at the base of that leaf, and then kind of just blending it up into the other green so that they merge together. If you're brave enough to stick your finger in that and just dab it a little bit and soften off, then you can do that too. So it's good in the big areas, you can get your fingers in there. It's just the pointy bits that are a bit tricky. All right, so let's go on to the next one. What I'm doing is I'm working from the back leaf to the front leaf, basically, or around anyway, from top to bottom, because this leaf at the top sits behind this one. So we needed to get that first one done, so then we can pop this one in front. It's a little bit of a process, and you have to kind of really think about how you're going to do that when you approach a painting, so, or a picture. It's always, you know, good to have a plan and a strategy and a way of achieving what you want to do. And you have to consider what sits in front of what, and what order everything is in, so that you can actually then paint it in that order. If we'd gone the other way and had to get in behind this leaf to put that one in, you could do it, but it would be harder. So I'm a great believer in making things easier for myself. So very happy to do it that way rather than the other way around. So I've just drawn in that little vein that I can see. So you can see the vein on this leaf kind of comes down the side. So it curls away on the right side of the vein, and then we can see more of the left side of the leaf. So obviously there's a little turn there, it's turning away from us. And so that's a good thing to note as well. So if you draw your little line down through there, and then I'm just going to, I'll put a bit of this limey colour around the edge in front of the other leaf. So that will help to bring it forward and lighten it up a little bit. And then I'm going to put some of my lime down in the base here, just in on the red bit there. I don't know if there was any red there, there is now. The nice thing about nature is you can kind of make it your own sometimes. You don't have to do exactly what you see. I'm smushing that around on there. So that's now given that little leaf you know, a whole new dimension. It's kind of popping forward more, sits in front of that one behind it, and is starting to take on a life of its own. It doesn't look so flat anymore. So I'm just noticing the right, that little leaf part, half on the right is darker in here. So I just picked up my other green, the first green, and putting that on there. So the other thing you can do, rather than pushing it all around with your fingers, is just dab colour over colour, very carefully and gently, but just have a play with that and see how that works. And I love just layering colour on colour, because it kind of shows what's underneath, but it also has this beautiful layer on the top. You don't always have to stick your fingers in there, although that is probably one of my favourite parts. So that leaf looks like it's pretty much good to go. I might just pop a little, I've got my purple here, I thought I might pop a bit of shadow just down inside here. That's nice. Purple and green are yummy together too. And then I'm going to just dab it lightly. So see how that's given it that little bit of a shadow, and you can see the twist in the leaf as it kind of comes down the side there. So that's quite nice. It's all about tone. It's all about the light and the dark and what goes where. So always, that's why doing the charcoal drawing is really good, because you just get such a better idea of where the shadows and things are. And then you just convert your colours into your tones. So remember, we put this in order, these colours in order from light to dark. So this limey green is one of the lightest colours, and then your purple is one of your darkest colours. So you can kind of play with those two to get your shadows and your lights in your leaves, because we've got our mid green to make the leaves, and then if we use a bit of purple to get some shadow or dark in there, so not too dark, I don't want to make it too dark, but purple into there that's beautiful. Gosh, I love that. And then, so I'm just onto the third leaf now, and then I can pick up my lime green, which is my lighter one, and just pop that in where I can see a little bit of light. So I can see just a hint of the vein pulling up through there. So I've just put a little bit of light there, and then I can see a little bit of light green on the edge here, and then a little bit on the tip. And so I'm just sort of smushing my pastel in those spots, and that's now given that leaf a little bit more life. Kind of makes it look like it's bending and catching the light and so forth. And then if you find it's too bright or you want to quieten it down, just dab it lightly. So sometimes, you know, blending is lovely, but you don't want to blend everything, because as soon as you blend something, it just turns to mud. So dabbing it lightly will leave the colour there, but it just kind of pushes it into the paper. So it hangs on to it a bit harder. So I'm going to call that one done, and then we'll move on to this next one. So this little one sits in front of the one we just did, which means there's a lighter edge to it.
Jeanine,
yes.
Jeanne, can we just slow down just a tiny little bit?
Absolutely, yes.
Just give us a minute.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for asking. That's great.
Okay, thanks.
No worries. Yeah, cool. That's good. Thank you. When I used to run classes in person, it was easier because I could actually see what everyone was doing and where they were up to, and kind of craft it around, you know, that. But it's harder now because I can't actually see what you're doing. So, yeah, it's tricky. So I really appreciate you know, pulling me up and saying, hey, hang on a minute, because there's nothing worse than being left behind and feeling like you can't catch up. So that's very cool. Very cool. And also the benefit of, you know, the video is good too, because you can pause it, turn it on and off, and, you know, do it in your own time. So that's been really good too. I've got to turn off my Facebook thing. It keeps popping up all the time. Oh, stop it. Must be stuff. Can't see the tab. Sorry about that. Sounds like someone's going out for coffee and I'm not going.
Oh.
Oh, damn it.
So that's okay. I'll come back to.
No, it's okay. We can wait. It's all good.
Yeah, I just seem to have lost my first two leaves and I'm in a big blur. That's all now. So
okay.
So
rightio.
Yeah, gotta get some delineation back. But no, that's okay. You go on now.
Carry on. All right, lovely. Yep. Thanks, Karen.
I've finished my second.
Cool.
So
good.
Are you just third?
I'm up to the fourth one now.
The fourth one. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I am behind.
That's
yeah,
all right.
Okay. Just go ahead.
I'll keep yabbering for another couple of minutes.
Okay, thanks. Start.
Cool. Yeah. So the third leaf, that's that taller one, and so it's got a bit of the mid green in there, and then I've got some lime in there. I marked in the vein, so the little vein mark. And if you put the lime green to the left of that vein at the bottom there, it kind of gives the leaf a little bit of a fold. I think I need to add a bit more actually. So just in here, put a bit more light there, and hopefully that'll kind of make that fold around a bit more. Might need to brighten up my line a little bit there. So as I said, if things look too bright or anything, just dab it in, just soften it off. So there's so many different techniques you can do with pastels, with blending and dabbing and all those things. So you've really just got to experiment and try and see what works in different instances. If you want to push colour in or make it more bright or bold or something like that. So there's lots of different techniques. It takes lots of practice and just trial and error, really. Okay, so we'll get on to this next leaf. So this one's number 4. And what I did was I've highlighted with my limey colour the edge of it, because I want to bring it forward and set it in front of the other one, because it kind of curls around in front, doesn't it? Okay. I'll bring that around there, and I'm just going to smudge it in a little bit because I just want to soften that off a tad. And then I'm also going to add, do I want some purple in there? I think I do at the base. So where they're curling out from the strawberry, there's a little bit of shadow in there. And so I'm just going to pop a little bit of purple in there to darken that up ever so slightly. Like, it's really subtle, nothing seriously strong or too dark, but just something really subtle. And I feel because this is folding around, I'm going to add a bit more light to it, and maybe some green on the end, or limey green on the end. So I find when I do leaves like this, there's always one dodgy one that I can't get quite right. I think it might be this one. There's always one, isn't there? So we're learning all this together, by the way. I'm not a pro at all. I'm just figuring it out as we go. So thank you for trusting me to do that. It's kind of fun. I had a woman call me the other day. She's a carer for someone in Melbourne, and they'd been looking at our classes, and she was really keen to do one or try one. And so I sent her and her patient, the person she cares for, I sent them the video for the rooster. And anyway, she wrote back to me yesterday, and she was so excited. She'd never touched a pastel in her life, and did this amazing painting and loved every minute of it. And I thought, you know what? That's what gives me joy. Absolutely. It's just such a joy that people, find that thing and get excited about it. And if I can be the one that helps you do that, then how cool. What a blessing. Love my life. Have you heard that song by Robbie Williams, Love My Life? The best song ever. Anyway, I'm rambling now. See, this is what I do to give you time to catch up. Okay, so let's move on to this nice big fat leaf. I think my leaf's slightly different to that one, but as I said before, this is nature and we can kind of make it how we want it, as long as it's sort of like a strawberry leaf, doesn't really matter. So I've got my green in there and I put my bit of red on the tip because it's got that lovely little brown tip on there. And I can see, so this one's got a few more veiny kind of details just at the top there. You can see where, you know, it's got all those little light marks. So what I'm going to do is just draw in some lines with my lime and just come from the tip and pull them down through the shape of the leaf. So they kind of just merge down into the leaf. And then I've just put the little lime pastel on its side and I'm very lightly rubbing over the top. And when you do that, it picks up all the texture of the paper. So you get this beautiful gritty kind of layer over the other green, and it's quite nice. Yeah, my leaf is way off shape, but it doesn't matter. A leaf is a leaf is a leaf. So that's quite nice. And then I want to put a bit of purple in the base of it because, again, there's some shadow under there and that little bit's tucked away. So obviously it's got to be slightly darker. So put a bit of purple in there and just gently push that through so that we get that lovely gradual blend from dark up into mid green to the light, the limey green. Nice. And don't be afraid to pick up the other green that we started with too. If you want to pop a bit more of that over, you can always layer. So layering's the best. Kind of just keep putting your layers on and building it up. I'm going to add a bit more veins or lines onto this one. There we go. That'll do for that one. And then this last little one, he doesn't have a whole lot of variation in colour. It's kind of all the same green. I am going to put a bit of lime in there just to give it a bit of body. And I'm going to say that maybe the tip of it is catching the light, and then as it folds away in towards the strawberry, it gets a little darker, so we can pop a bit of the purple in there. Something like that. And then, of course, there's that little one that we missed earlier, or I missed earlier on the edge there. So that's just literally a green line. And there's a little, so there's a gap between that and the edge of the strawberry, just a tiny little hole there. So what I'm going to do is clean that up with my eraser so I don't have any charcoal or powder or dust or anything in there. And then we can put the edge of the strawberry back in through there. Okay. So that's our leaves. And if you need to get back into those afterwards and, you know, touch them up or, you know, do a bit more work on them, then that's fine. You'll be able to, because they're not actually that hard to get at. I just wanted to make sure that we got them done because they're all kind of sprouting from the same spot. And I wanted to get that done so then we can pop the strawberry kind of in front of the leaves. So let's fill the strawberry in now and get some red on here because I don't know about you, but I love red. What I'm going to do is start with my blue red. So that's I've got two reds. Remember we talked about two reds. So this one's my orange red. Got a bit more yellow in it. And this one's my blue red or my darker red. So they're my two reds. And blended together, they're going to be lovely. But I can see on the strawberry, if you check the photo, this side, this right-hand shoulder, I'm going to call them shoulders, is oranger or a little bit lighter. And it's also, if you follow me around, if you've got two reds or even an orange, if you don't have two reds, pick up your orange or light red and let's just mark in or block in where we can see the lighter red. So I know it's a bit hard to see sometimes. it's kind of on the shoulders and on the tip where it's lighter, and then it's darker underneath where it's sitting on something. So in through here, I've got my darker red now. Put that in there, and I'll add some purple to that as well, just to give it some more shadow. And it's also darker through here. So all we're doing right now is blocking in our reds and sort of distinguishing between the darker red and the lighter red. So just using the two reds to do that. And then my lighter red seems to be around the front area here where all the light is. So it comes from the tip up into the middle and then sort of out onto the shoulders. And then the darker red sits underneath where it's sitting on a table or a surface. I'm just looking at the angle of that. If it's sitting on something, it's got to be a little bit flatter, I think. And then the darker red is also up under the leaves on the top there. And then through here over to the left. So we've kind of got those distinct patches. So you've pretty much got three patches of the light or orange red, and then two patches of the darker red. Hopefully you can see those on the screen. So once we've got those in there, that kind of gives us a map of the light and the dark and how everything's going to kind of fit and sit together. Okay, so now we've got some colour on there. I'm going to pop those back in my little box. And I'm going to just now push all this around with my fingers. So the shape of the strawberry is kind of, well, we've got all those little holes in there. So I'm going to do small sort of circular movements with my fingers and just gently, gently run around the shape of it and blend all this in. So what I want to do is push it into the paper so it fills it up nice and thick. So if you find yourself with gaps in the paper, or you can't seem to fill it up with colour, you probably need to add some more pastel. And it'll depend also on your paper and your pastels, but everything has an impact on what happens. So if you're using the gritty paper like this, you've got to put a fair bit of pastel down to get it to kind of fill up, basically. If you're on a smoother paper, then you won't need as much, but you might find that it won't hold on quite as well. And again, depending on your pastels. So if your pastels are really, really dry and powdery or dusty, then you're going to get a lot of dust. And it should hang on pretty well. If they're a creamy pastel, then you'll fill your tooth up really quickly. So even though the creamy pastels are beautiful, your Schminkies and Blue Earth is another beautiful brand, and I love them very much. But if you use them, for instance, like this, if I put all my Schminky in here and filled all this up, I'll be lucky to get 3 or 4 layers on. So you've got to be quite sparing about what kinds of pastels you use and how much layering you want to do. So different pastels will react differently, as will different papers. So it just all depends on the product and how it feels. So if you can see this, then you'll see now that I've blended this in. We've got a couple of lighter patches. It's very subtle, like they're not super obvious, but it's sort of lighter on the shoulders and in this center area where the light is catching on the strawberry, and then a little bit darker just up under the leaves and on the bottom there. And so they're the 2 reds, and that's a really subtle blend of tones. So if this was in grey, you'd hardly see it. You'd still see it, but it wouldn't be quite as obvious. So I'm going to tip off my dust. See how that's all fallen over onto my page and it's holding onto it here. So if I try to blend that in now, it's just going to go really messy. So I'm going to not touch it. And then at the end, when I'm finished, I'm not going to bother now because there's just going to be more to do later, but I'll show you. When I get to the end and I want to get this dust off my paper and leave my paper as my background, then what you want to do is get your kneadable eraser, but you just want to dab and pick it up, basically. Just want to dab and pick it up and find a clean side every time. It takes a while, but that's what you need to do. And rather than if you blend it or push it around, it just gets pushed into the paper. So you need to dab. Yeah, it takes some patience. All right, good. Now, what we need to do is start looking at where we're going to put some purple. So let's look at that. So underneath is where it's darker. So I want to pop a bit of purple in there, and then we'll kind of work it up and go around the leaves as well. Hang on, I'm just going to send Sally a message and tell her to stop messaging me. Cool. All right, so purple, this is my purple. Now, if you don't have a purple, this is a really beautiful purple. And again, purple's a hard color to find too sometimes. Then a blue. So see how they're very similar in tone? So the purple, I'll just put some light on, maybe that'll help better. They're very similar in tone. You can hardly tell the difference. So you could use either of those. Because I've already popped some purple in my leaves, I'm going to stick with the purple for now. But your blue will still work because when you put it into your red, it's going to go purple anyway. There we go. So pop a little bit across here. Now I'm just going very lightly. I don't want to press too hard because I don't want to make it too dark. Because the subtlety of the shadows and things on the strawberry are quite gentle, aren't they? And we don't want to make it too strong. I'm going to pop a little bit of it up here. So pretty much where we had the darker red, but not quite as much. So something like that. And I've literally just wiped it over there softly, softly. And then I'm going to blend it in gently, gently. Like that. So I'm just softly blending it in. I'm not pressing very hard. The harder I press, the more muddy it's going to go. So it'll kind of lose its vibrancy and it'll get really dark. So try not to press very hard. I'm just holding my finger quite lightly over that. Can you see how that's given it like a little bruised look, which I quite like. It's created a nice little shadow. And then under here, same sort of thing. So just pressing really lightly up through there so that we get that lovely shadow underneath. So that'll be the shadow from the surface that it's sitting on. And you could put a surface in there if you wanted to. You see how now we're building up the tones. We're getting the lovely darks and the mids all working nicely together. The purple's beautiful in the red. In fact, purple's beautiful in anything. So if you're not sure what colours to get next, grab yourself some purple, especially this dark, beautiful one. It's so nice. Okay. The next thing we've got to do, remember we talked about all the little holes in there. And we need to make each one have its own little shadow and its own rim of light. Yeah? So let's just dot these in. And what I'm going to do is dot them in with my purple because it's not too dark. And hang on a minute, let me just have a look at this colour. That's that dark magenta I liked too. Let's see what that does. it does a similar thing to the purple. So I guess either of those would be fine. You probably don't need both. I do like to test things and see. Yeah, either of those is fine. So I'll just push that in softly. And nice. All right, so let's use the purple. And what I want to do is just kind of put some dots on here. So use the end of your pastel and dot it around. So just noticing where these little dots are and trying to, they kind of all line up, don't they? So let's see if we can figure out the pattern for them. They crisscross. So if we go down in a line, and then as they come around towards the front of us, they get a little bit bigger. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put these little dots on here like this with my purple. And then we're going to dab each one and kind of smudge it so that they get a bit softer. And sink into the strawberry, because what we're trying to do is create little holes. So let's just put some dots on here. Might take a little while just to get the pattern going on. I'm sure my pattern's way out of whack now. They've all got to kind of line up somehow, but then be alternate, don't they? Interesting. So literally just dots, dot, 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 dot. Don't invest too much energy into making each one perfect, because we don't need to do that. I'm just doing dabs because we'll dab them in, so they're all going to sort of soften and blur anyway. And we just really need to suggest these. There, something like that. Now I know there's a lot more little holes on that strawberry than what I've done, but that's a good start. So I'm guessing I might wait a couple of minutes so you can get that done, and then we can sort of blur them all off by dabbing them with your fingers. Going to clean up the edge of my strawberry here. It needs a bit more of a shoulder, I think. So do your little dots. They don't have to be perfectly round either. Mine are not. In fact, I don't think they are on the strawberry, are they? They're sort of a little oval kind of shape. Okay. And you can see on each one of those little holes, there's like a shine on most of them. So I'm going to go ahead now and start to kind of dab my finger into them. So as I'm dabbing, I'm kind of pushing and pulling it across a little tiny bit, because what I want to do is blur them off a little bit. I don't want them to be really sharp. So I'm just doing this. You might need to wipe your finger in between every couple, because what happens is each time you do this, you'll pick up pigment onto your finger, and then if you keep going, you'll put it back down again onto the next one. So a fair bit of wiping in between here. The other awesome thing to have handy is paper towel. That's really good too. I should get a bit while I'm talking about that. So having a bit of paper towel handy like this, and then you can just wipe your finger off in between each dab. And that way you won't kind of contaminate the next one. Although I think I'm putting fingerprints all over my strawberry now. So we just want to blur the edges a little bit so that they're not all you know, sitting on the surface and being really bright or sharp. There we go. Actually, interestingly, if you kind of pull it, which direction are we going in? So on the left side, if you pull them very slightly to the right, it'll cast a little shadow, which is kind of the effect we want. What we're trying to do is get a little bit of a shadow going on, so then we can add our tiny little dabs of light and it'll start to look like a hole. So the ones on the right, if we pull them very lightly to the left, then the ones sort of in the middle where the lightest part is, just dab those so they sort of stay roundish. Cool. So hopefully they'll all start to look like holes. Once we get the light on, they're probably not now. This is just the start. But they're all a little bit blurred now, which is nice. So when they're blurred like that, they tend to get a bit of a shadowy edge to them. Now I can see in the middle of some of those holes, there's a little bit of a light dot kind of thing, seed. I'm going to just try it. You don't have to do this. I'm just going to see if it works for the inside. Oh yeah. Now this is the lighter red. So I probably could use maybe, they look almost like a mustard color. So you could do that if you have like a yellowy mustard sort of color, just to put some of the dots in the middle. And they're not everywhere, they're only in the ones that we can see at the front there. Yeah, that kind of works, doesn't it? I might go see if I can find some mustard. So this is what happens when you get through a painting or halfway through and think, I should have got that color. So there's no reason you can't. Go and grab a color. Let's see if I can find one with a nice little point or an edge on it. So I can get those fine points. So this is a kind of a mustardy yellow little stick of some sort. Must be a saber. See what happens. I don't want it to be too bright because we don't want them to dominate, but they are definitely a light tone, aren't they? They're similar to the lighter red. So if I do that, and as I said, you don't need to do all of them, just do a few, and that way it'll our eye makes up what we see. So when you look at a painting or something, if you see the detail just in part of it, then you'll just I guess assume or see it in the rest of the piece. So you don't have to put all the detail in. I'm just saying I need to put more holes in here. I don't have quite enough. A bit too spaced apart. Mess up my pattern now. Again, you've got to wipe your finger off. Oh, that one's too big, too much dust. Tempting to stick your finger in and try and fix it, but I'm just going to tip it off instead. That's looking a bit better. So yeah, probably needed a few more holes in there. And then I can do the same thing again, just blur those off. And then pop some of this little mustard colour in there for those little seeds inside. Like that. And they're very uneven, all my dots. It's a wonky strawberry. All right. So next I'm going to focus on the little light parts. So what am I going to use for the light? I'm just going to see what this lime green does. Because it's my third lightest colour, I just want to see if that's going to work, or do we need to go to the white or the light yellow? Yeah, I think we might have to go to the light yellow. It's not quite light enough. Yeah, okay, ignore that. Let's go for the pale yellow. So you know how I always say save the white for last. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to save the white for the really light parts and the highlights. So I always like to use something that's not quite white for some of the lights, and then you've still got room then to go lighter. So what I'm doing now is I'm looking at the picture and seeing where the light is on all these little holes. And you'll notice that the light's off to the left side on the ones on the left. And then as we move around from the front, because the light's sort of on the front here like this. This is when you know your pattern's right off. But you know the light is through here. So I'm just drawing this in with my yellow. And I'll have to blur that off and soften it down a little bit. But that's where all the shiny bits are. And then as it comes around to the other side, they all end up on the right side. And as we get further over to the side where you can't see, they kind of disappear a little bit, fade away. There we go. So as I said, this area here, it looks a bit like honeycomb really, doesn't it? So I'm just going to draw in some shapes around those there in the front, because that's where the light's hitting it. And then up the top here on the little holes at the top, up under the leaves or towards the leaves, the light's on the top edge of those little holes. So it kind of moves as it moves around the strawberry, depending on where everything is. There we go. So that looks a little bit rough at the moment. I'm just going to put a little bit, see that on the right side there, that you can just see kind of a bit of a glow in here. So let's just pop a bit of, now I've got my yellow still, my light yellow. If you don't have light yellow, then use white, but just press lightly, because we don't want it to be really bright. We just want it to be like a bit of a shine, a soft, gentle shine on that side, because the light on this side is bouncing off the surface that it's sitting on. So it's not direct light like we've got on the front of the strawberry. It's surface light. And I'll dab that in with my fingers and soften it off. There we go. Lovely. And then while I've got this yellow in my hand, I'm just going to pop a bit of it up into my leaves in the bright bits, just because I can. So even though you're working on one section, if you pick up a colour and think, oh, that needs to be up in there, then, you know, just don't hesitate, just pop it in. Lovely. All right, now under the leaves, I can see there's a bit more shadow. So I'm just going to stick a bit of green in there and push that into the red, because what that's going to do then is reflect the green from the leaves onto the strawberry and also create some shadow. So it gives you that continuous feeling of something. So it looks like it's all connected. Because we've got green in the leaves, it's good to have a little bit of green in the strawberry as well. So that's a good spot to put it. I also feel it needs to be slightly darker up in here. So I'll pop my bit of purple back in there. Just to get some shadow in there. And then over here, so this little leaf on the very edge, it's also casting a slight shadow just on the edge of the strawberry. I don't know if you can see that or not. Looking for all those little things that you kind of don't notice usually. When you start painting, you start noticing that sort of stuff. You really start to take notice of shadows and light and how things, you know, play together. Changes the way we view things. So that's starting to look a bit like a strawberry, I think. And I think I might pop some more dots just on that underside where it's dark through there. Feels like it needs a bit more information under there. It's a bit loud, isn't it? So I'll soften those off, just dab them in a bit. Dust. And then under the strawberry, so we've got this lovely shadow. I'm going to use my blue violet in there. That's my darkest one. And so I think that's probably the darkest part of this image under there. And so if something is sitting on a surface like this, and we can't see the surface, I'm just going to have to assume it's a white table or something, then it's got to have a shadow, hasn't it? So everything's got to be kind of grounded. If we put it somewhere, and now I'm just going to pull that shadow across like that. So it just kind of blurs it off at the ends a little bit to soften it off. Make sure it's really nice and dark under the strawberry. So where the strawberry and the table meet, get it nice and dark in there so that it creates, yeah, a nice bit of drama. Pop a bit of purple in there as well, just to warm it up a little bit. Nice. Could technically pop a bit of red in there as well, because this will be reflecting the strawberry. So it's got to be picking up some of the colour from that, which is also nice. And you can just gently pull that across like that. Get that lovely soft blurry edge. Put too much on that end, so I'm going to try and get that off. So the final thing I want to do is just push in that shine. Tip off my dust first. So I just want to push the shine in a little bit, because those marks are a little bit too strong. So if I soften those off lightly with my finger, just dabbing. So I'm not blending. If I blend, I'm going to lose all my dots and everything else I've put in there. And probably should be wiping my finger off in between parts. Because what happens is, see, as I'm doing this, what's happening is the light yellow, or yeah, pale yellow, it's kind of mixing into the red underneath it, and that makes it a more opaque. So it's making it kind of, I don't know, pale or white or something. So it's not quite as vibrant as I'd like. So what I'm going to do to change that is just go around each of these with my reddy orange colour, because it's my lighter red that I had in this part, to brighten up these sections. I'm using the tip of the pastel, so I'm just getting a line in there, just a mark, just to get that vibrancy back in, because what happened was when I added or blended, dabbed the pale yellow, it kind of went all milky. Milky is the word, that's what I wanted. And I didn't want that to happen because I love the vibrancy of the reds. That's better. And then as a final touch for the highlight, we can add our white. So I've got my white here, and I can just do something like that. So see how it's not really white everywhere, but just in a couple of spots. We've got this bright white shine. So when you're adding highlights or your white at the end, you don't want to overdo it because it kind of takes away from the brightness. So save your white for last, but don't do too much of it. Just be quite selective with how much you use, and that way you'll have more impact and it'll be much more dramatic. So don't put it everywhere. Because I pushed in the yellow, it sort of softened off those light lines, and now I've put white in a couple of, well, not a couple, 5 or 6 spots, and that should be enough to give it the shine I want. I'm really tempted to put some white in my leaves, but I'm trying really hard not to. Up on the top there though, what did I use before? Must have been my pale yellow. I have to turn my Facebook off next time, won't I? I would do it now, but I'd have to shut this down because I can't access it while this is on. Okay, so I'm just going to highlight through there. Just on the top shoulder, you can see a little bit of light, similar to what we did on the other shoulder. It's just got some light bouncing off the top there. So that's nice, just to brighten that up a little bit. Cool. So I used my pale yellow to do that. And very lightly, so don't press very hard. If you press hard, you'll get a much stronger colour. If you just go light, just softly, and then that'll be enough just to give it a bit of a shine on that top shoulder. And so while you're looking at this, you're probably thinking, oh, this is awful, blah, 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 I don't like it, I can't do this and make that happen. If you're not thinking that and you're really happy with it, that's very, very cool. But if you are, then I would advise you to finish up, and well, not finish up, but go away, not now, but soon when we're done, and have a break, just walk away from it. And you'll be surprised when you come back and look at it in half an hour or whenever, and you'll think, wow, it's not too bad at all. Promise. That's how it happens. So even I'm now looking at this thinking, oh, I don't know. But I know when I come back later on, it'll be okay. It'll all be okay. So I'm just putting a bit more of my red, my light red in here. Nice. So that's pretty much it for our strawberry for the day. So I'll give you a couple more minutes, and then we will do some show and tell and have a look and see how you went. If you are watching this video, thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this little class and learnt something. And I would love to see the photos of your finished strawberry. I'm very happy to pop that into my Facebook page and my newsletter. So please share. And just one final tip, if you've got dust like this on your page, which I've got because I tipped it all off to the left, just remember you can use your kneadable eraser. Just dab it like that and pick it up basically off the paper, and then keep finding yourself a new or a clean edge And that's why they're called kneadable, because you can knead everything in like you would dough or bread, and push it all in and then find a clean section. So see how that's really nicely lifting all of that off there for me. So just be careful you don't blend it in. If you push it in, it's much, much harder to get off. So you might want to then fill the background in with another color or something if you can't get it off, because these papers do stain quite easily, and the pastels are you know, strong colors will hang on really tight. So, you know, that's not too bad. Kind of tidied it all up for me. And you can just go around the edges of your drawing again with the kneadable eraser and touch up different areas that you might want to tidy up a little bit if you went outside the lines, like I did. And again, you can use that around the leaves too. So if you feel your leaves are a bit blurry or shabby, just grab your kneadable eraser, knead yourself a sharp little edge, like a knife edge, and kind of just go around the edges and try and tidy them up a little bit. See if you can get them to be nice and pointy on the end. This one I tried to do earlier and it blurred a little bit. But for the most part, as long as you don't blend it in too much, it should be fairly easy to get off. Just dab it. Make sure you just dab and don't blend. If you rub it, it's just going to push it in. So there you go. Thanks for coming. Don't forget to sign your artwork too. So just pop your name on there like that. This is a pastel pencil. So always handy to have a little pencil nearby that you can sign with. Also great for doing, you know, finer work. If you want to get in there and really work on those shadows, you could. Could be here for a whole day getting all that done. So thanks for coming and see you again soon. Ciao for now.